Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's TX141 here, bringing you another Ace in the Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. Today we'll be reviewing the Spitfire F Mark 9, F standing for Fighter. To give you a brief historical overview on the Mark 9, the Mark 9 saw its origins in 1941. To set the scene for you, June 1941 saw the origins of the full production of the Focke-Wulf 190 A1. Ergo, the A1 saw service on the European theatre operations during that year up against the RAF's Spitfire Mark 5. The results were quite horrific for the RAF, with the losses being insurmountable, and as a result the RAF had to have a solution very quickly. Otherwise all rodeo, circus and ram raid exercises into occupied Europe had to come to a complete halt, as they actually did up to early 1942. The initial plan was to develop the Spitfire Mark 8, a redesign of the basic Spitfire design, yet this was classed as going to be taking too long, and so an alternative had to be derived, and that alternative was to take a slightly modified Mark 5C, outfit it with a Rolls-Royce Merlin 61 engine, and designate it the Spitfire Mark 9, retaining an armament in the C-type wing of 4 303 machine guns and 2 20mm Hispano Mark II cannons. The Spitfire Mark 9 first saw its test flight in February 1942, and by June 1942 it went into full production and tipped the balance on the European front, allowing the RAF to achieve its success against the Luftwaffe and commence its rodeo, ram raid and circus operations once again. However, the legacy of the Spitfire Mark 9 does not stop there. What was originally intended as a simple stopgap aircraft turned out to be something far, far better. To give you some small record-breaking achievements of the Spitfire Mark 9, here are two. In 1944 October, the Spitfire Mark 9 was the first plane to shoot down a jet. It was achieved by 5 Spitfire Mark 9 pilots that managed to shoot down an Me-262. 2 Me-262s had been forced down by P-47 pilots prior to this, however it was the first accredited shootdown. Additionally, the Spitfire Mark 9 holds the record for the highest altitude fighter kill, being achieved against a Junkers 86. However, I do not know the altitude and so I will not attempt to estimate or quote it here. Additionally, the Spitfire Mark 9 was the most produced variant of Spitfire during the course of the war, if you count for the addition of the Spitfire Mark 16, which was a Mark 9 with a Packard Merlin engine. Ergo, one could say that the Spitfire Mark 9 was the true legendary Allied fighter of the Second World War. And while I'm slightly biased because I am British and I am gushing over information right now, it is reckoned to be by a number of Allied pilots as the definitive fighter in the RAF and Allied service. So how does the plane perform in game exactly? Well, much like its historical counterpart, the Mark 9 is a plane which can tip the tide of any dogfight, any battle. And as you're going to see in this ground strike gameplay on the map Top of the World, I employ the Spitfire Mark 9 in a number of different roles during the course of a single game. This is additionally my first patch 1.39 gameplay on the channel, and so it's a first for everything. To begin with, the role I have started using the Spitfire Mark 9 in is a high altitude or higher altitude interceptor, defending the bombers as I would normally on the ground strike map Top of the World. Using my setup of a 30-minute fuel load, 300 meter gun convergence, tracer ammunition in the machine guns and stealth ammunition in the cannons, the reason for this layout is simply so that I can see where my rounds are going using the machine guns, and then implement the cannons more effectively due to the stealth ammunition carrying the most high explosive rounds. My initial pursuit of enemy fighters chasing bombers is very akin to the P-47 and P-51 gameplays I've already put up on the channel. And having already achieved my ace, I decide to follow one of our B-25 Mitchells back to the airfield, because they're critically damaged and I want to make sure that they get home, or that the enemy have a very difficult time in taking out my fellow bomber. Ergo, we've already shown that the Spitfire Mark 9 has a brilliant climb rate, and that it can accelerate very well at higher altitudes in order to catch up with those enemy fighters chasing your teammates, and also manoeuvre itself into a suitable firing position, as we did on that KI-45. We're now going to descend to lower altitudes, for the simple reason that I could spend the entire game up at higher altitudes having achieved my ace and just deter anyone coming after the bombers. However, in this gameplay I really wanted to put the Spitfire Mark 9 to its limits and see exactly how far I could go in order to get the most out of the plane. And so I turn off the engine and dive on this Messerschmitt 110C. My initial burst is not enough, I run out of cannon ammunition. However, I rip apart the ailerons on the left hand side of the 110, and I believe I also take off the flaps. Additionally, I kill the rear gunner. I was hoping that that would have been enough to dissuade the 110 from chasing our Mitchell. However, they seem rather persistent, and so I loop over, as you can do very tight loops in the Spitfire Mark 9, and I come in for another pass, checking to make sure there's no enemy fighters coming up behind me. Achieving a critical hit, I go for the kill, taking off their left wing and achieving kill number 6. At which point, a Yak-1B comes in behind and manages to clip me with one of their 20mm rounds. However, it's not enough to do any significant damage, and at this point I go from purely vertical fighter to turn fighter, making the most of that really powerful rudder that you see on the Spitfire Mark 1 and Mark 2 in particular, and the turn circle that's taken over from the Spitfire Mark 2, yet the superior engine power which could be said to have come from the Spitfire Mark 5 in terms of flight characteristics. The Mark 1B did, the Yak-1B did have a slight energy advantage, and as you can see here, they're still pursuing me. However, this is my intention. The more I can drag the Yak-1B into friendly territory and away from our B-25 Mitchell is all the best, and that's why I'm typing into our Mitchell player, keep going, I'll keep them off you. And so as I hook myself round for another pass on the Yak-1, they come in, but I outmaneuver them in terms of their firing angle, and I sweep back round to take another pass at them. However, they're a smart pilot, making the most of their speed. However, now that they've decided to turn, with the rest of my team coming after them, it's only a matter of time before one of us gets them. However, I want to get that kill because I started the dogfight with the Yak-1B. However, additionally, I dislike fighting in cloud, and as you can see here, I'm quite nervous at some points, wondering whether there's going to be an enemy fighter nearby. And I'm gradually scoring hits on the back of the Yak-1B with my limited cannon ammunition, which means I just have to rely on my gut instincts. Having reloaded the machine guns, my final burst kills the pilot. However, at this point, I take some fire from a friendly Messerschmitt 109F. Now I could have at this point retaliated in kind and blown the Messerschmitt 109F1 out of the sky. However, I did not, and the reason for this was twofold. Firstly, this Spitfire Mark 5B was trying to come down on me in order to achieve an effective pass. However, they miss, and as I come round to get the kill on them, a pair of my teammates take them out accordingly. And the second reason is because while I would have grinned for a little bit taking out my own teammate, is that really the spirit of the game? And as I say that, I get my 8th kill on that PE3 by killing their pilot. Is it really the spirit of the game to go after a friendly teammate just because they weren't the best of sportsmen or women? No. Instead, we have to smile, or I smile, and know that I'm doing my job. And that because of my efforts, our B-25 Mitchell made it home. So moving on from that slight negative side of this gameplay, I hope I've already shown that the Spitfire Mark 9 is an admirable fighter in both the horizontal and vertical, with a brilliant climb rate, a brilliant turn circle, and armament which at convergence is dead lethal, and also brilliant acceleration. It's hard to actually really come up with any weaknesses for this plane. However, from the extensive number of games I've played with the Mark 9, there are two noticeable weaknesses, one of which is carried over from the previous iterations. For those of you who've watched my Spitfire Mark 1 video, you'll know that I said during the course of that video that the roll rate suffers immensely at higher speeds. The Mark 9 does counter this somewhat. The roll rate's a little bit more acceptable at high speeds. And by high speeds I mean over 400 km an hour. Pardon me. However, the roll rate does still tend to seize up at about 450 km an hour, to a point where planes such as the Focke-Wulf 190A5, your contemporary in your battle rating, will be able to outroll you significantly. Ergo, if you're going to see as I dive in this Hurricane Mark II, you have to line yourself up very carefully, rather than try and roll onto target at the last possible second. At this point I decide to give up on chasing the Mark II, because A, they've already been shot down, much to my lack of observational awareness, and also for the fact that a large number of my teammates have converged on that enemy fighter, and so I make my way over towards the ground targets on the enemy team, hoping to score one or two more kills. As I was saying, as a result, because of the roll rate seizing up at higher speeds, I wouldn't recommend trying to dogfight above speeds of 500 km an hour. Your best bet is somewhere between 300 km an hour to 450. Your roll rate stays at a sufficient level, however you can also make the most of your turn circle and your overall manoeuvrability. Another thing to note, and this was the second weakness I noticed, your contemporaries such as the the P-51D Mustang, the Focke-Wulf 190A5 and the LA5FN will not be able to outturn you per se. However, they will be able to out-accelerate you at higher speeds. In particular, the P-51D is a pure example of this. I've had a couple of games where I've chased Mustangs up to about 5,000 metres, and now both our planes are equipped with the same engine. However, what I've noticed is, whereas I can accelerate to about 400 km an hour quite rapidly and match the Mustang, beyond that the acceleration of the Mark 9 starts to fade away. Another prime example would be a plane such as the LA5FN. Those planes will keep accelerating to high speeds, i.e. about 500 km an hour, while the Mark 9 will begin to struggle to accelerate. Not to say it can't attain a high top speed, but you'll lose out slightly there, and as you go higher and higher, and the planes go faster and faster, this weakness becomes more noticeable. However, the intents and purposes of most games in War Thunder, where the dogfights never usually happen above 5,000 metres, and they usually happen at medium speeds at most, i.e. about 400 km an hour, and head to lower speeds, the Mark 9 is really one of the best planes in the game in my opinion, because it possesses everything. It may not be the best, its turn circle can be outmatched by zeros, its roll rate by Focke-Wulf 190A5s, its armament by a number of planes. However, it's one of the only planes I've ever flown in this game that is a true legend, that lives up to its expectation and enables you to perform incredible feats in games. And having just sealed our 9th kill on that Messerschmitt 109, with the initial burst actually knocking out their engine, it's a real testament to the plane. And what should be noted is that Mark 16 that you get later in this game is a Mark 9 with a Merlin Packard engine and with an E-type wing as far as I know. And you can see how the Spitfire carries on from the Mark 9 all the way up to the Griffin variants, i.e. the Mark 22 and 24 in particular, which have just been introduced with patch 1.39, of which this is going to be my first gameplay on the channel from patch 1.39. Ergo, having another slightly patriotic ramble, which I apologise for, I really want to get one more kill. I want to seal my double ace, because while getting 9 kills for a Mark 9 would have been lovely, I just thought I could get one more out of the game. And so against my better judgment, I dive into this massive enemy planes and push the manoeuvrability to the limit. Dodging the gunfire of that I-185 and taking a flak shell close by. I know there are a number of enemy planes coming up towards me, and as I come around on this I-185, I start to overuse the web. And so I decide to dive back down again and try and take out the Spitfire, achieving my final kill and sealing my double ace. And now it's just a case of trying to come around on the enemy planes. And as you can see, our roll rate's keeping together at 550 km an hour, but it's starting to suffer. And as I manoeuvre out the way of another burst from that I-185, the game comes to an end. Ergo, it's now time to review the scores. I apologise for the frame rate issues there, it seems to be common with this patch. So to review the scores, we managed to get a double ace, netting us just over 80,000 silver lines, of which 50,000 of that was from a battle trophy, so about 30,000 silver lines in actuality. Additionally, we got just shy of 2,000 research points for the plane, and 2,500 research points for our next plane, which will be the Tempest Mark V, a plane I'm looking forward to. To summarise the Spitfire F Mark IX, it is a plane that truly lives up to its legend in War Thunder. Not being the best in everything, but having a little bit of everything. And it is an admirable plane. If your foe can outperform you in the vertical, you can outperform them in the horizontal. If your foe outperforms you in the horizontal, you can outperform them in the vertical and apply that really strong rudder in order to get round on your foe, whether they do tight turn circles or try to outmatch you in an edgy fight. The armament is more than effective. The two 20mm cannons and the 4 303 machine guns make a brilliant combination. And while your acceleration is poor, beyond 400 km an hour by comparison with other planes, most of the time you'll never need to worry about that, or you can break off and dodge your opponent as they come in for another pass. So I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder content on my channel. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, take care and have fun in the skies.